Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Omniman86, and today we're going to be taking a look at my reading list for the month of January 2023. All right, everyone. First up, we have Batman Catwoman by Tom King. This has artwork predominantly by Clayman, but also has some fill-in issues by Liam Sharp as well. You'll see this cover here is the direct market edition. DC did something pretty recently with a couple of these books that you're going to see, and they're actually doing standard edition and direct market covers. It is a standard size hardcover. You can see it's not as large as a deluxe edition, but still a pretty thick book, and we're going to talk about the contents here in a minute. But this is the direct market version, so it's got a pretty cool cover here. This is by Clayman. The other cover is also by Clayman, which you can check out somewhere around here. And you can see what we've got going on there. And then let's take a look underneath the dust jacket. Here you can see more artwork by Clayman. We've got one of the covers over here. And then this was what they did for the back of the issues. It really kind of tied into the whole story. And this image right here gives you some insight into who is in this book. And so the contents inside of here, you've got a lot in here, actually. So you have all 12 issues of Batman Catwoman and also the special, which features tribute to John Paul Leon, who passed away while this book was coming out. Then we also have Batman Annual number 2 from the Rebirth era. We had material from the Catwoman 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular, which featured a story by Tom King that ties in to this as well. And then also a story from Detective Comics 1027, because that was a special version, 1,000 issues of Batman, which is pretty crazy. And so there's a lot of content in here. And when you get into it, this concludes Tom King's Batman run. If you've read his Batman before, you know that he kind of had it planned all the way through this point, but then there ended up being some different plans, and so James Tynion took over the book for a while, and when James took it over, then Tom kind of spun off and was able to complete his run in this mini-series here. And so there's a lot of really great stuff in here. Obviously, the artwork is probably one of my favorite parts in here. So when you look at it, there's just a lot of really great artwork from Clayman in here. He does such great work, and that was one of the reasons why they said they needed to use Liam Sharp for some of this as well, is because they needed to give Clay a chance to catch up. There were a lot of delays on this book, so it took a while to come out, but we finally got the entire collection in here. It's a really great book. If you've not read it, I'm not going to talk spoilers or anything, because I encourage everyone to go check it out. If you're not familiar with Tom King's Batman run, you don't necessarily have to read it, but you can definitely appreciate this a lot more once you know what's going on. And hopefully for a lot of people who are maybe disappointed by some of the things in his run, the ending of this gives you some closure and leaves you satisfied. Next up, we have Superman Birthright. This is the deluxe edition by Mark Waid with artwork by Lionel Francis Yu. Again, this is the direct market edition. So just like they did with Batman Catwoman, and they've done with some other books, this is the direct market edition. If you're not familiar, direct market edition covers are what you can typically find at your local comic shop, or also online comic retailers like in-stock trades, cheap graphic novels, organic price books, and places like that. If you're shopping at like Barnes & Noble or Amazon or Target or any place like that, you're going to find the standard edition cover, which you can find somewhere here on the screen. But this is the direct market version. And so this has artwork by Lionel Francis Yu. And I don't recognize the artwork, so I don't know if this was possibly created just for this edition, which is pretty cool. So like I said, this is the deluxe edition. This is the large oversized format. Retails for $49.99, and this collects all 12 issues of Superman Birthright. If you're not familiar with this story, this was one of the first large kind of retellings of Superman's origin after John Byrne in 1986. And so this came out about 2004, and it originally was not intended to be part of continuity or be an official retelling, but it was so popular that they decided to let it stand. And this was the origin up until a few years later, when it was actually redone by Jeff Johns in Secret Origin, which is also available in Deluxe Edition. But let's take a look underneath the dust jacket here. We've got some more artwork here by Lionel Francis Yu. Really cool image of Superman there that kind of wraps around, but we still have the logo and a little piece of artwork up there. So a nice version of Superman here. So pretty cool book. This is just like the other one. One thing about the paper that you'll see on this is that they do use this kind of matte paper. So it's not a shiny glossy paper. It's a little bit thicker, but it is this kind of, some people call it newspaper material or, just matte paper. So you'll see, again, with this one, just really phenomenal artwork. Lionel Francis Yu has some really fantastic stuff going on in here. And so you can see a little bit of this through here. All 12 issues are collected here, and it's a really fantastic read. If I had read this before, I don't remember reading it because I was going through this. I was like, man, I feel like I remember this, but I didn't. But it was a really, really great read. The story is so good. If you have not read it before, it's a great standalone Superman story. You get plenty of Superman. I know sometimes in origin stories, you don't see Superman until like right at the end, but in this one, you get plenty of Superman. So if that's your thing, then it's chock full of it. But yeah, go check it out. Next, we have our first omnibus that I read this month, and this is the Uncanny X-Men Volume 1. Now, it's interesting that this is called the Uncanny X-Men Volume 1 because at this point in the history, the book was still just called the X-Men. It's not until the next omnibus that we see the title change to the Uncanny X-Men, but I guess it makes sense. And so this was the big relaunch for the X-Men. We had not seen original stories from them in quite a while after the X-Men started to just become reprints of earlier issues. And so with this, we actually see here on the cover, Giant Size X-Men #1, we had this creative team come in and relaunch X-Men with a new team, new writers, new artists, and really just kind of revitalized the entire X-Men universe. And so in this, we saw the new X-Men team of Cyclops, Wolverine, Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler. This gentleman back here is only in a couple of issues, and I literally just forgot his name. But you can see the previous X-Men up here at the top. We had Beast before his transformation, Angel, Cyclops, Iceman, and Marvel Girl. But you'll see this is kind of the new class here. And so Wolverine popping up for one of the first times since his first appearance in The Incredible Hulk. And this is where, he starts to get his claim to fame and become the rough Canadian superhero that we all know and love. And so this is artwork by Gil Kane and the original cover for that. And you can see we've got the spine here. So this is the reprint, which actually this is coming back as a kind of a restock reprint very soon. So if you've not picked this up before, you're going to have an opportunity, I think in March, to pick this up. You can see we've got credits here for Chris Claremont, Dave Cockrum, and John Byrne. We'll talk about the creators here in a minute. This is Volume 1. Of currently 4 and soon to be 5 volumes of the omnibus that are currently out. And here they did the big mosaic of all the different artwork or all the covers that we see here. And you can see down here at the bottom, this collects Giant Size X-Men #1, the X-Men #94 through 131, and Annual #3. Annual #3 is really special because it has artwork from George Perez. And so since he's no longer with us, it's always nice to get anything we can from George. But you can see kind of the progression. You get to see a snapshot of some of the books that we had here. We got to see the birth of Phoenix here, and then also the emergence of Dark Phoenix and the beginning of that storyline. We have the Hellfire Club, which kind of wraps up this edition and continues into the next one. There are appearances by Magneto. There's some early appearances by Alpha Flight, and so just lots of really great storytelling through here. It just keeps getting better and better as you go. If you're not a fan of like older comics, and when I say older, I'm talking this is what you would consider Bronze Age. If you're not normally a fan of that, I challenge you to kind of read this and to keep it going because it just keeps getting better and it evolves and the character work is done so well. Yes, some of the dialogue is a little bit different than what we have these days, but there's a lot of really great stuff in here. I have never read X-Men before. before. This is actually my first reading of X-Men, and so my goal this year is to read all the way through the Chris Claremont era of X-Men. And if you're familiar with that at all, you know that is a very daunting task because there is so much out there. And actually, that leads us to our second Omni. And that is the Uncanny X-Men Volume 2. I liked the first one so much, I decided to keep going before I took a break. And so I read the entirety of the second Omnibus here. And this is where the mythology really starts to kind of expand. We get to start to tie in some other groups and characters even more in this one. And so here we have this incredible cover by John Byrne, which is the cover to X-Men 137, shortly before it was renamed to the Uncanny X-Men. And so you can see that issue there. We have our spine. You can see the little snapshot here from Days of Future Past, which if you're familiar with the movies, this is the story that was based on. We have credits here on the spine from Chris Claremont, who wrote all of this, John Byrne, who was an artist for a good part of this, but also a co-plotter, and so helped Claremont a lot with the plot duties. And then Dave Cockrum, who took back over from Byrne after some fill-in artists. And so you can read a lot of the kind of commentary from writers in here. Stan Lee wrote a lot of things, and they talk a lot about kind of the changeover of the artists, and also in the issues, there's a lot of acknowledgement from Chris Claremont to these folks. And so here we have the end of the Hellfire Club and the Dark Phoenix saga. So we get to see, spoilers, ultimately what ends up happening to Jean Grey here. And so there's, a time where Cyclops leaves the team because he is, so upset over everything that's happened. Again, if you've not read it, you probably have heard, but if you have not, then I'm not going to spoil it for you. We get the introduction of some major new characters, including Kitty Pryde, and so she's with us in these issues, and that leads us into Days of Future Past, which obviously, like I just said earlier, the movie is based on, but very, very different in this than what we saw in the movies. We get lots of aliens. We get a Doctor Doom storyline, especially involving Storm. We get some background for Storm, which is really cool. We get a tie-in with the Avengers, and then we get into Marvel Fanfare, get a story in the Savage Land, feature Spider-Man, some in there as well. And then we wrap up with some more kind of Kitty Pryde-focused issues before it gets wrapped up. And so this omnibus collects the X-Men 132 to 141, the Uncanny X-Men 142 to 153, annuals 4 and 5, the Avengers annual number 10, Marvel Fanfare 1 through 4, Bizarre Adventures number 27, Phoenix the Untold Story number 1, and material from Marvel Team Up 100 and Marvel Treasury Edition 26 and 27. So a lot of content. Like I said, this is where it starts to really kind of expand. You get some mini-series mixed in there, and we start to see a lot more happening. So I'm very excited to keep going after this one. I've got Omnibus Volume 3 coming up after I finish reading some other stuff that I wanted to take a break with, and that's what we have for this month. And with that, it brings us to the end of the reading from January of 2023. These were the collected editions that I read throughout the month. Obviously, the Omni's taking up most of the month with readings. I will say Batman and Catwoman and Superman Birthright were fairly quick reads for me. Just 1 or 2 sittings with those because they were so good. And they're only about 12 issues, and so you can read those fairly quickly. But all of these really phenomenal. I'm very excited about my read-through of the X-Men with these two here. So I'm excited about what's to come with that storyline, especially what's coming up in Omnibus number 3 with some big stories. Superman Birthright, I'm a huge Superman fan. He is my favorite superhero of all time. And so reading a story that either I had forgotten about or never read before is always exciting with Superman, especially when it's as good. So if you're a Superman fan, I would classify this one as a must-read part of the mythology. So, up there with the John Byrne Superman Man of Steel miniseries, Death of Superman, all that kind of stuff. This is necessary reading. And then Batman Catwoman. This is a great modern story. Again, it doesn't really kind of take place in continuity, so you don't have to worry about hearing a lot of spoilers for things to come or things that have come before. It really can kind of stand on its own while also serving as a wrap up to Tom King's Batman run. So if you were a fan of that at all, this is a great wrap up for that. Even if there were some things you didn't care for, Tom King typically does really well with mini series or maxi series, depending on how you want to look at it. And while it may not be as deep as things like Mr. Miracle or Human Target, it's still a great read. There's so much great stuff in here. It includes one of my favorite Batman characters, which previously had never been seen in comics before, which is really, really exciting. And just the way that he structures the story happening in 3 different timelines is really, really cool. So I encourage everyone to pick all of these up and to check them out.